The Daily Mail just said out loud what independent commentators have been saying for years, and that matters more than you might think. Here's why. The Daily Mail, the exact newspaper Harry and Meghan have spent years suing, threatening, and trying to silence, has now openly on the record through its own editor-at-large, walked through the state of the Sussex marriage, the Sussex business, the Sussex Hollywood network, the Sussex finances, and the Sussex strategy. All of it, in one conversation, on a podcast. And the picture she paints is not a flattering one. Alison Boshoff, speaking on Tom Sykes' Royalist podcast for the Daily Beast, connected 5 separate threads that the mainstream British press has spent the better part of 2 years treating as unrelated stories. The marriage tension, the children dispute, the Hollywood social collapse, the agent problem, the financial reality underneath the philanthropic image. 5 threads that, taken separately, each look like a manageable problem. Taken together, they paint a picture that even the most committed Sussex supporter is going to struggle to explain away. This is the story of spring 2026, and the fact that it is being told where it is being told by who is telling it is itself the story. Let's walk through it properly. Start with the children, because Boshoff identifies this as the first and most personal crack in the marriage. And once she explains it, you cannot unsee it. Since returning to Instagram in early 2025, Meghan has been gradually, carefully, methodically increasing the public visibility of Archie and Lilibet, not dramatically, not all at once. The technique Boshoff describes is almost surgical in its precision. She compares it to grandmother's footsteps, the old parlor game where someone takes a small step forward every time your back is turned. Lilibet from this angle, Archie from this angle, the back of a head, the corner of a smile, a leg disappearing into the next room, a glimpse of a hand. Always partial, always carefully not the full face, but taken together over weeks and months, an unmistakable pattern of gradual exposure that has moved the children, frame by frame, from fully protected to almost entirely visible. Boshoff's question is simple and devastating. Why are we not being more binary about this? Either the children are protected from public life, or they are not. There is no principled middle ground. There is no creative third option. You either do what William and Catherine have done with George, Charlotte, and Louis for over a decade, keeping them almost entirely off the public stage, or you accept that your children are part of the spectacle. There is no honorable position in between. The slow, calibrated leak is not caution. It is, as Boshoff puts it, the very Sussex way of traveling down a confusing middle road that serves no clear principle other than maximizing audience engagement while maintaining the appearance of restraint. And here is why this matters so much for the marriage specifically. By every reliable account, the protection of his children is the issue Harry feels most strongly about. It was one of the central stated reasons for the entire post-royal exit in 2020. The Sussex brand was built in significant part on the public claim that the British media environment was unsafe for the children, that California offered a kind of privacy that London could never provide. Harry made what he described as the ultimate parental sacrifice to keep his family safe from exactly the kind of media intrusion that defined the worst moments of his own childhood. Now set that publicly stated principle against the Instagram pattern Boshoff describes. The man who walked away from his country to protect his children from media exposure is watching those same children being used as content for his wife's social media following. That is not a small domestic disagreement. That is a fundamental breach of the original promise the entire Sussex public project was supposedly built on. And the British public is increasingly noticing the gap between what was promised and what is actually happening. Harry, perhaps more than anyone alive, understands what media exposure does to a child. The pursuit of his mother, the relentless attention of his teenage years, the bargain he and William reportedly struck with the British press as young adults, some cooperation in exchange for genuine private space. These are not abstract concerns for him. They are the lived architecture of his emotional biography. To watch a parent of his own young children take a different approach, even a gradual one, is the kind of slow-burning wound that in a healthy marriage gets addressed, discussed, and eventually resolved through compromise. The Boshoff reporting suggests this resolution is not happening. The pattern on Instagram continues. The partial visibility keeps accumulating. And Harry, by every available indication, is unable to hold the line he publicly staked his entire post-royal exit on. That is the story of a man losing a private argument inside his own home in real time, with the gradually accumulating evidence visible to anyone with a phone. If Palace Insider is giving you the full picture that other channels skip, go ahead and hit the like button. It helps us reach more people who want the real story. Now, the second thread. The career disaster. And Boshoff does not list one or two strained relationships. She lists the entire ecosystem of senior Hollywood power brokers the Sussex camp has now alienated. With confident specificity, Anna Wintour at Vogue, one of the most influential gatekeepers in fashion media. The Met Gala invitation that should, by every measure of post-royal celebrity logic, have been a routine annual fixture. The natural continuation of the relationship that began with Meghan's attendance as a working royal has not been forthcoming at all. The Kardashian-Jenner family, who were, by Boshoff's account, actually doing Meghan a quiet commercial favor by promoting her products to their own enormous audiences. A genuinely significant gesture from people with the reach they have. Alienated. After what became known as Photogate, the incident at Kris Jenner's 70th birthday party where the Sussexes attended a high-profile event hosted by Jeff Bezos and then publicly demanded that photographs of their attendance be removed from the internet. Read that back slowly. They attended a public celebrity event. They were photographed. They then demanded the photographs be removed. That is the kind of move you can make exactly once in Hollywood. Once you have made it, the doors close. Quietly, permanently. Without any public announcement or official fallout, you simply stop getting invited. The calls stop being returned. The warmth disappears. And nobody says why, because in those circles they never do. Lauren Sanchez, who hosted that event and who was until very recently considered a genuine ally of the Sussex camp. Now, by every available account, considerably less warm. Jeff Bezos, whose patience with Sussex demands for photographic control reportedly evaporated entirely during that same incident and has not recovered. Ari Emanuel, the founder and chief executive of WME, the most powerful single agent in modern Hollywood, who in theory still represents Meghan. Boshoff's reporting suggests that whatever the official paperwork says, Emanuel has personally washed his hands of the Sussex account after a particularly difficult dispute over staffing requests during an American holiday weekend. Think about what that means. The most powerful agent in Hollywood has informally stopped working for you, but the paperwork still says he represents you. So officially, you have representation. Practically, you have nobody. And Ted Sarandos, co-chief executive of Netflix, who wrote the Sussexes their largest single post-royal check. By Boshoff's account, he has also reached the end of his personal patience. Read that list again. Anna Wintour, the Kardashians, Lauren Sanchez, Jeff Bezos, Ari Emanuel, Ted Sarandos. That is not a list of minor industry contacts. That is a roll call of the single most influential power brokers in 21st century American celebrity culture. And the Sussex camp has, in less than 5 years, systematically managed to alienate every single one of them. The entire premise of the post-royal Sussex business model was that Hollywood power could replace institutional royal support. That celebrity friendships could substitute for the platform they had given up. That sitting in a sun-bleached estate in Montecito, surrounded by the wealthiest and most influential people in modern American entertainment, would provide a warmer and more lucrative ecosystem than the cold British institution they had left behind. That bet has failed. The protective ring of celebrity allies has dissolved, one figure at a time, through a combination of difficult demands, contested boundaries, and the specific social capital costs that come from treating powerful people's patience as an unlimited resource. And what is left in the center of that vanished ring is a couple with a large mansion, dwindling brand projects, and an ever-shrinking list of professional colleagues willing to take their calls. Before we continue, if you are not subscribed to Palace Insider yet, do it now. Leave a comment below because the conversation in the comments has been seriously good lately. Thread 3. The strategy itself. Boshoff says it has collapsed. And the way she puts it is genuinely devastating. There is no longer a coherent Sussex business plan, no clear positioning, no narrative through line. What there is instead, in her words, is momentum without direction. 3 words, brutal in their precision. Because they acknowledge that the activity is real and there is a lot happening in the Sussex world, while simultaneously pointing out that none of it is going anywhere in particular. The Sussex public relations operation is generating activity. Magazine covers, brand launches, cameos, television specials, production credits, charity appearances, foreign tours. In raw volume terms, the output is considerable, but it does not point anywhere. It does not build toward a coherent commercial identity. It does not reinforce a single clear positioning. It is, as Boshoff puts it, scattershot. One month, Meghan is on the cover of Harper's Bazaar presenting herself as a fashion figure while making no mention of her own holiday television special airing the same week. The next month, she is making a brief on-screen cameo in an Amazon film, but only as herself, raising the genuine question of whether she is, in any current sense, still an actress at all. The next month, she is insisting Netflix release a public statement reaffirming their continued commercial relationship, only for that relationship to be quietly downgraded to a single salvaged scripted series project. Is she a fashion figure, an actress, a television producer, a lifestyle entrepreneur, a humanitarian campaigner, a brand founder, a podcast host, a philanthropist? The answer, by every available indication, is yes to all of them and genuinely successful at none of them. Because the strategic problem with trying to be everything is that you end up being nothing in particular. And in the modern celebrity economy, nothing in particular is worth almost nothing. The loss of professional representation is the structural cause of all of this, and Boshoff identifies it with admirable clarity. Whatever the official WME paperwork says, the practical reality is that there is no senior commercially aligned figure in Hollywood currently driving a coherent plan for Meghan. No agent setting up the next acting role. No agent negotiating the next endorsement. No agent strategically positioning the brand portfolio. Instead, there is a lawyer. The same lawyer Meghan has had since before she met Harry, doing what lawyers do, which is not by any definition the same as what an agent does. Boshoff asks the question directly. If you were a film producer who wanted to discuss casting Meghan, who would you call? If you were a brand executive who wanted to discuss an endorsement, who would you contact? The honest answer is nobody. There is no functioning commercial deal-making apparatus around the Sussex brand. The structure has collapsed, and the activity that remains is increasingly activity for its own sake, generating headlines but not revenue, generating visibility but not commercial momentum. Compare this to how the people who have actually built durable post-celebrity empires actually operated. Gwyneth Paltrow spent over a decade building Goop into a coherent lifestyle authority before attempting to scale it commercially. Martha Stewart spent decades establishing herself as the unimpeachable authority on domestic excellence before launching her product lines. Oprah Winfrey spent 25 years building her television authority before launching the magazine, the cable network, the production company. The pattern is consistent. Build the authority first. Build the trust first. Build the audience first. Then monetize the platform you have spent years earning. The Sussex approach has attempted all of these stages simultaneously with no underlying authority to support any of them. Activity without authority, output without ownership, visibility without value. Thread 4. The financial reality. And this is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable, because the carefully cultivated public image of the Sussexes as wealthy global philanthropists gliding between international charitable engagements depends entirely on the assumption that the underlying finances actually support the lifestyle. Boshoff, citing Tom Bower's financial reporting, suggests they do not. The Colombian tour, by Bower's account, may have cost in the region of $4 million to deliver. Let that number sit for a second. $4 million for 1 week in one country. The security costs alone, which the Sussex camp proudly and publicly insists they pay themselves, reportedly dwarf any income the trip itself generates. Harry, at premium speaking rates, may collect around $50,000 per appearance. Meghan, at her current commercial valuation, may collect perhaps $150,000, with earlier claims of $300,000 or higher reportedly being significantly inflated from what was actually being paid. Multiply those fees across a week of engagements and the income simply cannot, by any honest accounting, cover the production costs of mounting the trip. The tours lose money. They generate headlines. They generate the appearance of continued global relevance and royal-style international significance. But in straightforward financial terms, they do not pay for themselves. Which raises the obvious question that Boshoff does not quite ask out loud, but clearly implies, who is actually covering the costs? Bauer's reporting suggests that significant portions of the financial underwriting may be coming from external charitable foundations. That is a startling claim, and it deserves to be treated carefully. But it points to a structural pattern worth understanding. External money flows into the Archewell Foundation. Archewell then distributes carefully timed, carefully publicized sums to selected charitable causes. The Sussexes collect the photo opportunities, the speaking awards, and the visibility associated with those distributions. The net effect is the appearance of philanthropy without the underlying personal wealth that makes genuine philanthropy possible. Boshoff quotes the principle directly, "You can only be a philanthropist if you are genuinely wealthy. The essence of real philanthropy is having so much money you simply give it away without the need for credit." The Sussexes do not have that kind of money, so what they have instead is a performance of philanthropy, channeling external funds through their foundation, distributing them in carefully staged increments, and collecting the reputational dividends as if the original generosity were theirs. Compare that to how authentic royal philanthropy actually works over time. King Charles founded the Prince's Trust in 1976. Over 5 subsequent decades, that organization has helped over 1 million young people in the UK. Princess Anne has chaired Save the Children for decades. Catherine has spent more than 10 years building the Royal Foundation Center for Early Childhood into a serious research and policy institution. None of these required a film crew. None of them were designed around a social media strategy. They were built quietly, patiently, through years of unglamorous institutional commitment that has nothing to do with how the work photographs. Set the Sussex philanthropic performance against that generational standard. And the gap is not just embarrassing, it is structural. It is the gap between people who built the real thing over decades and people who are performing the aesthetic of it over Instagram. Thread 5, the final one. And it brings everything back together into a single conclusion. The strategy is incoherent. The agents are gone. Hollywood has cooled. The finances do not support the lifestyle. The marriage is under visible strain over the children. And the public image of high moral authority that the entire Sussex project depends on is structurally no longer sustainable. Boshoff's framing of the underlying psychology is the most interesting part of the whole conversation. The Sussexes, she argues, want to be perceived as people of high moral rectitude and genuine global value. On something close to a presidential level. They want to be seen as global philanthropists and international moral voices. They want the kind of social standing that real generational wealth normally purchases. But they do not have generational wealth. They have a fading commercial portfolio, a shrinking list of allies, an estranged relationship with the institution that originally underwrote their global visibility, and growing public skepticism on both sides of the Atlantic. So they perform. They perform philanthropy. They perform global influence. They perform celebrity friendship. They perform marital unity. They perform Hollywood relevance. And the more they perform, the more the gap between the performance and the underlying reality becomes visible to anyone paying close attention. The most important thing about what Boshoff is doing here is not the specific details she reveals, though those are significant. It is that she is doing it at all. This is the editor-at-large of the Daily Mail, the newspaper the Sussexes have most aggressively litigated against for years, and she is now walking through point by point in a mainstream platform conversation the structural failures of the Sussex project without softening any of it. The protection has lifted, and it has lifted for 3 identifiable reasons. First, litigation fatigue. The Sussex legal strategy has produced mixed and often unsuccessful outcomes in court. Each case has generated its own paper trail, its own released documents, its own revelations about how the Sussex camp actually operates. That accumulating record has eroded the deference the British press once extended. Second, commercial reality. When 70% of the British public views Harry negatively and 80% views Meghan negatively, the business logic of soft Sussex coverage simply no longer calculates. British editors answer to readers, and readers want honest, critically engaged reporting. Third, competitive pressure from independent media. Commentators on platforms like YouTube and Substack have been doing the harder reporting on the Sussex situation for years. Mainstream outlets that continued to soft-pedal the story were being outflanked. The Boshoff conversation is the moment a mainstream outlet chose to match the independent reporting, rather than lose its audience to it. So what does this all mean? The Sussex camp has lost its mainstream British media protection. It has lost its Hollywood relationships. It has lost its most powerful agent. It has lost the warmth of its most important celebrity allies. It has lost the substantial majority of British public goodwill. And it has lost the internal coherence that would have allowed it to course correct. What it still has is a large house, a complicated marriage, a small staff, some charitable initiatives running largely on external funding, a streaming partnership reduced to a single salvaged project, and a public image increasingly at odds with the underlying reality. The institution they walked away from, by contrast, is quietly in the strongest position it has been in years. Not because it actively defeated the Sussex narrative. It did not. It simply kept doing the work. Patient, daily, unglamorous work. And the patient logic of that approach has, over time, produced the outcome that no PR strategy could have manufactured. What the entire Sussex situation has demonstrated, perhaps more clearly than any other modern celebrity case study, is the impossibility of building durable public standing on grievance alone. The Sussex Project, in its most fundamental structure, has always been a story about what was unfair, what was withheld, what was denied. That framing is structurally incompatible with the kind of long-term regard that genuine institutional service builds over decades. Catherine has built one of the most durable public reputations in modern royal history by doing the complete opposite. She rarely speaks about her own difficulties. She has navigated serious personal illness with a public grace that was widely acknowledged across the political spectrum. She rarely positions herself as a victim of institutional pressure. She simply gives, quietly, persistently, without a Netflix crew filming the process. And the British public, with its long memory and its instinctive recognition of authentic service when it sees it, has rewarded her accordingly. The Sussex approach has done the opposite at almost every decision point, and the structural exhaustion the Boshoff reporting now describes is, in many ways, the inevitable arithmetic of a public project built primarily on grievance rather than on contribution. You cannot ask the public for sympathy indefinitely while simultaneously generating a stream of controversies that require new explanations. At some point, the account runs dry. And by every available indication, that point has been reached. The Boshoff reporting is not the cause of the Sussex exhaustion. It is the moment the mainstream press finally felt safe enough to describe what was already structurally happening. And this conversation on a podcast that royal insiders quietly listen to is the marker that future royal historians will point to as the moment the British press finally said the quiet thing out loud. The Sussex Project is not working. It has not been working for some time, and the institution they walked away from is quietly, gracefully, and without any public bitterness, reaching the end of its patience for the performance. There is a final observation worth making before the question. The British public has been remarkably patient with this story. For nearly a decade, it has consumed enormous amounts of media attention, generated millions of headlines, and produced multiple best-selling memoirs and streaming documentaries. Through all of that, the public has watched and waited and drawn its own conclusions at its own pace. Those conclusions, by every available polling measure, are now firmly and consistently drawn. And the mainstream press, through Boshoff's reporting, has finally caught up with where the public already was. So here is the question I want to put to you directly. Do you think Harry and Meghan can genuinely course correct from here, given everything that has now been laid out publicly? Is there a version of this story where they rebuild what has been lost? Or has the structural damage gone too deep at this point? Drop your answer in the comments. This is genuinely one of the most interesting debates in royal coverage right now, and I want to know where you stand on it. Subscribe to Palace Insider so you do not miss what comes next, and a like really helps more people find this kind of analysis. See you in the next one.